Gardner here from Municipal World. We're at the 2019 Spring Workshop for the Ontario Municipal Administrators Association in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Joining me in the Municipal World Media Studio is Erin O'Hoski, here to talk with us about strategic planning. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So tell us a little bit about your background.
So my background, I've been in the municipal sector for probably 16 years, working for a range of municipalities, mostly supporting chief administrative officers in strategic planning, special projects, and communications.
So one of the challenges facing a lot of communities is keeping the momentum going for their strategic planning. There's a lot of energy, of course, in the beginning. They're developing the strategy, and then as things go on, moving towards the implementation, things kind of fizzle out a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think a lot of municipalities right now, whether they're just starting on their strategic plan with their new term of council, or whether they're wrapping up the process, municipalities are in various stages. So, assuming that you've undertaken that process, you've got a sense of who your new council is, how many are returning, how many are new, you're aligned with what they heard, because of course that's a huge amount of community engagement that they did during the election. So assuming that, and now you've reached a point where you've worked with your local council and there's consensus on a strategic plan. So that's a great news story. It's how do you keep that momentum going? So the communities that I work with, what we like to talk about is how do you bring your strategic plan to life? And your strategic plan is more than just a document. Of course, it's hugely important that your strategic plan is helping your municipality be more efficient and effective and helping the organization run smoothly. But how do you use it as a tool to inspire? Particularly now in a world where, we're competing for talent. We heard today that smaller municipalities need to be much more creative in ways that they compete for talent. And one of those ways is their story. So how do you now take your strategic plan and turn it into a story and convince the audiences you need to convince that you're serious about the direction that your community is going in?
So what are some of the strategies or best practices to get that working as a tool for your community?
So one of the best strategies that we can think of is taking your communication strategies and aligning it directly to the business objectives in your strategic plan. So a lot of us have heard the term know your audience, but what we like to do is work and get that more granular. So what audience? Most municipalities have three general audiences to make their strategic plan come to life. And that is those within their organization, making sure their employees are engaged. Those within their borders, are residents feeling proud to live in the community that they're living in? Is the business community feeling a sense of confidence? And then the third audience are those outside your borders. So if your strategic plan is looking for a higher caliber of development, what are those developers that you have to bring in? And all of this sounds very, common sense, but I think it's particularly important now because the way people receive information is changing. So at this conference, we're talking about leveraging metrics to continue momentum. And one of the ways you can do that is get on a really granular level. Metrics are important for two reasons. Number one, the more you know about your audience, the more you can tailor your story to meet their needs. It's not just about what your community is trying to say. It's the audiences where you have to change their hearts and minds, what they want to hear. So that's the first, very important. The second thing is using data and metrics as proof points for the stories you're telling. So it's fine to say your community is innovative or your community is committed to climate change, but without the hard data to back that up, in this era where people aren't really trusting what government's saying or what the media is saying, those metrics are hugely important to, number one, target the audience. And secondly, make sure that the audience knows you're serious and you have credible proof points to back up what you're saying.
You've got the evidence.
Absolutely.
Inspires some trust, right?
Yeah.
So how do you go about communicating to these different audiences then? Do you use different strategies depending on what the audience is?
Yeah, so one of the strategies you can use is audience mapping. So what you do with audience mapping is you bring the operating department or the subject matter experts you're coming into a room and making sure you're not jumping to tactics. So some things I'll hear is, oh, we have this, now we need a video. Or, let's get on Instagram. So it's kind of what are we trying to achieve in our municipality? Who do we need to reach, and why are you trying to reach them? And then the best practices really follow that, because every municipality is unique and every municipality needs to be more strategic about how they target those audiences in order for people to listen. We live in a world now where people are bombarded with information every day. You wake up, you can check your news in 100 different ways. You're on social media. I know Jesse Hirsch today talked about cognitive leadership. So in order to get into that space, municipalities need to know who they're communicating to and what's differentiating them, how they're telling those credible stories. So audience mapping really is an exercise to bring departments together to understand who it is they're trying to communicate to, why, and then developing their strategy from there.
And there's so many tools out there today that really knowing your audience is key to selecting strategically which ones are going to connect.
And for developing high ROI, because without that data, there's 100 different ways you could be advertising. There's 100 different ways you could be marketing your community. Until you know who you're trying to reach and why you're trying to reach them, you don't know that you're getting good ROI on those investments. And in some cases, the most effective ways might be free.
Okay. Any other considerations we might want to think about as we move towards the implementation?
Yeah, definitely the employees as an audience. And I know, we're always talking about employee engagement, but I think that there's no better advocates for your community than the people who work there, particularly if your community is small and even if you're a larger community. So making sure employees are engaged, they understand the strategic plan, they understand that they connect, whether they're working on a project that's directly connected or whether they're working on things that are indirect, how that's benefiting the community and how that's moving the municipality forward. And if you're ready as a municipality, empowering your employees to speak to that will go a long way in establishing credibility for your organization.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. These are great insights that you've shared. Really appreciate you coming in to talk with us.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it.
I'm Susan Gardner for Municipal World with Erin O'Hoski. We share your stories.